Another Mallu movie equals another kick-ass storyline. But special kudos to Kunchacko Boban for his awesome performance, and also the villain gang, equally as good. Welcome, guys. Welcome to Buddies and Blockbuster. I'm your host AJ, and we're here to review Officer on Duty. Truth be told, I didn't have a kind of any expectation about this movie. I just, thought it's just going to be like a cop investigation, just going to find out things, and that's about it, right? Boy, I was wrong. Yes, it's kind of that flow of events. You have a cop, and there is a story to investigate, but it's the depth and how heavy this movie is across the board. So aside from giving a special kudos to the cast and crew, I've got to give a special shout out to the director Jithu Ashraf for the way how he's carried this whole movie. It's mainly the storyline and how this investigation unfolds at the end and how everything is kind of connected back to the main character, who's Kunchacko Boban. To do that with all the sequence and all the shots that's included in this movie was just awesome because you're hooked. You want to know what's going to happen next, and it keeps you gripping, right? Because there's so many components that happen, you just don't know what's going to happen next. And I always love the fact that directors can do that, even though maybe the story might seem to be simple, but there's so much more that you can do with the way how it's shot in terms of sequences. And the cinematography is done by Robbie Vargas Raj. It's kudos. You get that Kannur Squad vibe, and because most of the folks who have done the cop kind of movies have been part of this cast and crew. I cannot spoil the story much. That's something that I will recommend you guys to watch. There is multiple components happening from an investigation, which relates to a lot of drug use, rape cases, and a lot of heinous components that the antagonist gang conducts and does, and how all of that ties back to Kunchacko Boban is basically the story. The weight in his shoulders and the components that he's gone through is also part of the storyline aside from the investigation. And here's why I mentioned about giving Kunchacko Boban a special shout out is because of his acting skills that he showcases in this movie. Couple of scenes, man. Oh my god. Like, yes, there's a way to show panic attacks when you have it, but the way how he does it in these scenes based on the circumstance on what he's gone through and what he's seeing during that specific segment, just the kudos. I mean, he needs to get an award just for that piece, right? How he is this stern and this aggressive cop, and there's this one scene at the beginning. I'm like, oh god, I've never seen that before. I don't want to spoil by telling you what that scene is. You guys need to watch it. But that first shot of the way how he's introduced, God, it it caught most of the folks in the theater off guard. As I mentioned, the antagonist gang, the reason on why I like them so much is because their characters made me hate them the most. Anybody can do that to the audience of you just hate the fact that they're doing such absolutely ridiculous things. You know they're bad. You know they're going through components that shouldn't be done, but they still do it. They feel whatever they're doing is right. You feel like killing them because that's the stuff, the heinous stuff that they do throughout this whole sequence of the movie. And in their mind, it's justified. It's like the consequences that they face is something that they don't care about, and that whole flow and sequence is just next level. So I need to give a shout out to that whole gang. Vaishak is kind of the lead, Vaishak Nair. Sometimes he turns into the Joker vibe from Batman. He has that piece going, but the whole aura that he brings to the table is just great. And we have Leia Mamin, Aishwarya Raj, Ramzan Muhammad, all of them in the gang. Everybody plays their character to the best way possible of making sure that you hate them. Now, the one thing that I kind of liked about this movie is usually you have good guy, bad guy. They do bad stuff to the good guy and back and forth. But in this, these folks go through something that I'm not seeing before, right? The bad guys or the antagonists going through a bad sequence of events themselves, which triggers a lot of things. But the fact that you bring down the villain into the normal level, that's why the director has done a great job. And the storyline of that flow is just impressive. I know I've not mentioned much about the story, but it's worth watching the movie to understand how the flow is. And based on what I mentioned, I'm pretty sure you guys are intrigued of knowing what unfolds at the end. The only negative piece about this movie that I felt was it's a 2 hours and 30-minute movie, and during the end at the climax scene and the fights that happen, it was a bit dragged out and stretched out a bit too much. I think that should have been condensed a bit more, because every other action sequence and the flow on those fight scenes before was perfect. But that last climax was a bit too much, and they tried the shaky cam. It doesn't always work out, at least in my opinion, for every kind of sequence. But that piece was dragged out. A couple of scenes, if they were just shortened it a bit, it would have been crisp and clear. Instead of having it to be 2 hours and 30, maybe 2 hours and 10 minutes would have been perfect. Aside from that, there was nothing wrong with the movie, because I had a good time. It was a good storyline, awesome performances for the cast and crew. It delivered. I mean, I'm glad that I watched it. There's just one show in Texas, and I'm glad that I went for this. My recommendation is, if it's available in a theater near you, just be sure to check it out. You will definitely love it, or check it out when it comes in your streaming platform. But for the folks who watched Officer on Duty, what do you guys think? Do you love it as much as I did? Put it in the comments. Aside from that, be sure to like, subscribe, and share.